Many founders don't burn out from work. They burn out because their nervous system only knows chaos. Many entrepreneurs are conditioned by stress, not stability. Peace can feel unfamiliar and even threatening at times. I can promise you, after building business for over 30 years myself, and long before I started doing this, writing books and speaking and things of that nature, one of the telltale signs that I discovered very early on was my nervous system was conditioned to chaos. Now, I grew up literally 9 years old. I'm asked to take care of my grandmother. She's dying of cancer, and my little brother, who's 3 years younger than me, all of a sudden became something that I was tasked with as a 9-year-old kid. Childhood largely stolen from me. That began to be a 30+ year journey of me trying to figure out who I am outside of over-abandoning myself on behalf of other people. The reason I share that brief story with you is not to have a victim mindset or poor pitiful me or nothing like that. The reason I share that story is because we all have preconditioned nervous systems based on the environments that we always knew. And there's no shortage of entrepreneurs and business leaders who grew up in a system of lack and scarcity, as well as a seeking of service just to have a seemingly worthwhile lifestyle based on the people around us. How about you? How were your formative years shaped? Were you shaped in stability or chaos? How has that contributed to your leadership? How has that contributed to who you are and how you grow? You see, I discovered if you grow up in chaos, chaos feels familiar and safety feels scary. This is one of the things I want to hit in this video really hard, because I'm seeing far too many business leaders burn out of overwhelm, and in some cases even go out of business because they can't get the handle on how they think and how they feel. So I want to start with this. Chaos becomes a comfort zone. How much does that sound true to you? How much does that ring true in your frame of reference, your life, your style? You see, many entrepreneurs build their early success by solving problems under pressure. So when pressure is not present, all of a sudden meaning is not significant. In that environment, chaos becomes the environment where they learn to win. So again, when you don't have that environment to lean into, once you're actually building stability, a lot of us, if we're honest, will throw a chaotic grenade into the whole mix, just so chaos is reestablished so we can feel like we're actually making momentum, not realizing we're actually self-sabotaging ourselves along the way. How many times as a business leader have you stood up in your business, whether mentally, physically, emotionally, or all the above, and known you should do something different than you actually did, and then beat yourself up because of it? How much guilt and shame do you carry for mistakes that you made, but not really being able to unwind how the mistakes were made in the first place, so therefore you repeat the mistakes? This is what it means to have chaos become a comfort zone. Your subconscious mind is actually what's at stake. It's the thing that's programming. It's the choices that make the choices before the choices become a reality. You see, when crisis response becomes the normal rhythm, calm can actually feel unwanted and even suspicious, or in my case, deeply scary and fearful. You see, some founders unconsciously recreate problems because chaos is the only environment that they ever felt competent or even needed. What's it like to actually not to be needed and still feel secure in self? How much of your identity is tied to being needed? How much of your identity is tied to being the person that can solve the problem, especially on the fly, when everybody else is under pressure and someone has to make it work? What if you could solve the problem without losing your identity in the chaos crisis to begin with? See, a lot of leaders, without realizing it, become addicted to the adrenaline of fixing things. In fact, most of the entrepreneurs that we help now that are just at $1 million in top line revenue or above, almost all of them are so accustomed to building business on adrenaline, they don't know what it's like or even think it's possible to build a business on peace. And I know that because I've lived it hundreds of times, thousands of times. Adrenaline carried me. Adrenaline also cost me chaos. It cost me damaged teams. It cost me loss of millions of dollars. It cost me family issues. But most of all, it gave me reasons to beat myself up for the leader that I knew I wasn't, but the leader I knew I wanted to be. So every time I didn't measure up to the standard that I put in my head, I didn't give myself grace to grow. Where are you at in your journey? How much is chaos showing itself? Is it a comfort zone for you? Or is it something you're fighting to disrupt and interrupt and get out of your life? This whole concept leads me to my next point. Has urgency become your identity? This is something I had to ask myself a number of times over the last 3 to 4 years, when you would think I would know better. After building a team in multiple states with hundreds of team members, of great people with doing millions of dollars in revenue, you would think I would know better. But I was addicted to urgency, and addicted to urgency that became my identity. So when urgency wasn't present, I created it, even if it didn't need to be there to begin with. Many founders quietly attach their identities to being the hardest worker, the problem solver, or the one who never stops moving. They don't feel safe enough to stop moving. Again, I say that from personal experience. Productivity becomes the measurement of personal value instead of a tool for stewardship. Let me say that again. How much money is it going to take before you feel like you have value? How much leadership is it going to take before you feel like you have value? How much family connection is it going to take before you feel like you have value? The interesting thing about this whole scenario as we walk through this journey in this particular video is understanding that nothing outside of you will ever fill what's inside of you or what's missing inside of you. The only thing that fills the hole that's missing inside of you is faith and discovering what your authentic identity is to begin with. But here's a caveat. You'll never find your authentic identity if your authentic identity is connected to something outside of you. What if you looked at your life, your business, and your leadership, and you didn't need to perform or prove yourself to anybody? How would that change things? It's not the authority, the responsibility piece. It's the intent behind it that I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on the intent. What would it be like to just be you and not have the value of you determined by anything outside of you? Be completely present, completely grounded, completely at peace within yourself. This is what founders most need more than anything else. It's not another $1 million. It's not another new client. It's not another team member. It's self-stewardship. That's what we need. Because when the calendar slows down, if you don't have deep rooting and grounding, you'll begin to feel guilty and even restless. And if we're honest, irrelevant to your life and your business and those you love, which is one of the biggest lies you'll ever have is becoming a business leader in your own category. You see, over time, urgency stops being necessary and becomes a psychological identity that the leader feels obligated to maintain. This is why you feel the need to perform, to earn, to strive, and to grow, even when your soul wants a break, even when you need a vacation. But for some reason, if you feel like you take a vacation, what happens instead is you feel like the whole company is going to fall apart. So vacation begins to feel more like a punishment rather than a reward. That's not life. That's not living. That's not why you set out to build this thing. You set out to build this thing because you wanted it to be a reward, not just to yourself, but those you love. What good is it to gain the whole world and the entire process and lose everything, your soul and your identity in the process? This is why I want leaders, one part lion, one part lamb leaders, integrated leaders, to understand true leadership, authentic leadership comes from presence within, not external value without. This takes me to my third thing I want to discuss with you real fast. I want you to fully understand that peace reveals unsolved internal work. That's right, not chaos, but peace. Peace reveals unsolved internal work. When the noise of constant activity finally slows down, many leaders, including myself at one time or another, suddenly notice the internal questions they've been avoiding. The things that they should have been focused on, but yet they were too scared to focus on. Sometimes it's hurt, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's frustration, sometimes it's just being okay with yourself. When was the last time you even went to the bathroom without your phone? How much stillness does it take to feel really uncomfortable? This uncomfortability is actually where the real work is done. This peace of mind without distractions, without a phone, without a computer, without being on call 24/7. This is where you find yourself. You don't find yourself hustling and grinding and making a better effort. You find yourself by sitting with yourself and discovering who you are at your core. You see, issues around identity, purpose, and relationships and faith often surface when distractions disappear, not while distractions are present. These distractions are what's keeping you from seeing the internal work. This internal work is what's keeping you from scaling and growing your business, your leadership, and everything that you think you want out of life. This is the work. This is the truth. This is where you could actually step up and begin to show up for yourself by not abandoning yourself, by not constantly having to distract yourself. This work is the real work, and you're capable of it. I know you are. It's scary sometimes. It doesn't feel great at times, but bro, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's something special about waking up each and every day with a growing, thriving organization and the peace that goes with it. You show up differently to your family. You show up differently to your team. You show up differently to yourself when you remove the pressure of having to prove yourself to anyone. What if you didn't have to prove yourself? What if you could just be yourself? Calm environments reveal where pressure is actually hiding, which is why peace can feel uncomfortable. And leaders who have not experienced before get really frustrated really fast. This calm is where clarity is born. If I go back in my entire business history of all the businesses I've created, whether I've exited them or still operated them or sold them or whatever, when I go back and think about all that stuff, my biggest mistakes the entire time always came out of moments of what's known as emotional dysregulation. Having anxious activity to respond to something that seems like it's a chaotic environment or a fire. This is the trick. In stark contrast, the big growth, the big innovations, the big movements in building, the big movements in business, the big movements in leadership, you know, they never came from grinding and hustling. They came from stillness. They came from truth. They came from presence. They came from connecting to myself and realizing that, yes, I was called to build. I'm an architect by design. I architect people, I architect leadership, I architect businesses. But when my identity wasn't tied to the architecture, and it was actually tied to the divine architect, all of a sudden authenticity was born. And authenticity is magnetic. So let's talk about this for a second. Because the fourth thing I really want to share with you is what it means to become an integrated leader. You see, integrated leaders build calm systems, not chaotic ones. Mature leaders intentionally design companies that run on rhythm and structure and predictable processes, not constant crisis and not firefighting. So if you're in your business right now and you feel like you're a constant firefighter, this is a telltale sign that you're not leading as an integrated leader. Instead, your nervous system has been hijacked, and that hijacking is now controlling your mindset, and that mindset is now controlling your choices, and those choices are now controlling your results. And the only way to break this crazy, chaotic cycle is to slow down. It is not more activity. It is more presence. That will eliminate the reactivity. And all of a sudden, your decisions that used to be chaotic get clear. Your pace gets pure. Your systems get strong, and your rhythm gets resolute, because you are now seeing yourself with clean eyes for the first time. So why not become an integrated leader? Why not strive to build these calm systems? These clear systems, these calm systems, they allow the team to operate without the founder constantly intervening and actually creating the chaos in the first place. Healthy organizations create operational stability that allows leaders to think strategically instead of react emotionally. When structure replaces chaos, the company begins to produce results through discipline rather than adrenaline. You see, peace is not weakness. Many founders secretly believe that calm leadership means they are somehow losing their edge or becoming complacent. What is actually happening is they're becoming congruent. Think about the most profound leaders you've ever seen. Do they operate in chaos or do they operate from congruence? In reality, peace is a sign that systems, people, and priorities are fully aligned. Calm leadership creates clarity for teams because decisions are made thoughtfully rather than reactively. Remember, peace is not the absence of pressure. It's the presence of stability within the leader who's operating outside of the pressure. You have a choice. You can become calm and integrated and fully aligned, or you can continue the firefighting. You can continue wounding your team by accident, missing time with those that you love, not being fully present when you're present. You get to choose. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Chaos may have helped you build the company, but it will never sustain it. I've lived it. You'll just build more chaos, and chaos compounds 10x, tenfold. And it's not the kind of 10x you want to live by. You see, strongest leaders eventually learn that peace is not weakness. Peace is what happens when the order replaces the chaos. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I want you to check out this podcast right here. I think it's amazing. 1 part lion, 1 part lamb. Share it with a friend. You're never going to want to miss it. And if you like this type of content, where I get to talk directly to you, I want you to go ahead and check out this video over here, because I really think it's going to speak to you next. Until then, God bless, much love, take care, peace.